Senator Ted Cruz is our guest. Senator, how are you?
Michael, good morning. I'm doing great. How about yourself?
I'm good. I know you were in yesterday for Deputy Dhaliwal's funeral. I'm glad, grateful that you did that. I know it means a lot to his family especially.
Well, it really was a beautiful remembrance. We saw the city of Houston and Harris County all come together. There were thousands that came out to the funeral to honor Deputy Dhaliwal's life. And it was also quite remarkable because we saw law enforcement members of the Sikh community nationally come in from all over the country. In fact, there were even some law enforcement members who were Sikhs who came in from Canada in full uniform, wearing their turbans. And it was, his life was a real life of service, but he also championed religious liberty. And as you know, he became the first Sikh allowed to serve as a Harris County sheriff's deputy while wearing the turban and beard that his faith requires. And he was a pioneer, and it really is a tragedy to our community that he was murdered on Friday.
It is. And I don't know that we should ever make policy in the immediate wake of a tragedy, but we see this pattern of individuals who seem unfit for life in the civilian population. Here's an individual who served half or less of a prison sentence. He was out with warrants for his arrest. His ex-wife says she's calling his parole officer 10 times or more, begging them to take him back in. He's supposed to be in prison, and yet he's out. If he'd do this to a member of law enforcement, what would he do to the average citizen? Is this an opportunity to revisit serious criminal justice reform against violent criminals?
Well, I think that's a discussion we should regularly be having, that it is important that we do everything possible to protect our law enforcement and protect our communities. That when it comes to criminal justice, as you know, I've spent much of my adult life working in law enforcement before I was in the Senate, working to ensure that murderers and rapists and the most violent criminals, that they receive the most severe punishments and be taken off the street. And we know what works, and it is that our law enforcement should focus on violent criminals. And I do think you raised very good questions about why this individual was out. Why he was released, and obviously the fact that he would commit a cold-blooded murder of a law enforcement officer is profound evidence that this guy would have been much better off if he'd stayed behind bars, and we would have been much better off.
Indeed. If I can shift gears, I played on our podcast your conversation with Chris Hayes about global warming at the Texas Tribune Festival, because I believe people needed to hear that. Are we seeing finally a shift in the sense that people are finally ready to discuss facts and science instead of feelings and fears?
I hope so, and we should be, but I'll tell you, I think it's really incumbent on Texans to drive that conversation, because what we're seeing on the far left is a zealotry that climate change becomes treated like a religion. It's not science. It's not facts. When I was being interviewed by Chris Hayes, obviously a very left-wing MSNBC host in front of TribFest in Austin, when I said we should look to the science and facts and evidence, the lefties in the audience began hissing. I mean, they don't want facts. They don't want science. And as I pointed out in that interview, many of the politicians pushing this, it has nothing to do with the environment for them. It has to do with socialism. They are socialists. They want the government to control every aspect of the economy, every aspect of our lives. And so they use climate change as an excuse to say, if you don't agree to socialism, everybody's going to die. And it's fear-mongering, and it's not based on the facts. In fact, Michael, you will enjoy today. So this morning, Chris Hayes tweeted out and said, gosh, Cruz told me last week that the satellite evidence shows that the atmosphere isn't warming. well, then why on earth are they building an air-conditioned baseball stadium in Dallas? To which I responded, and I think you'll enjoy this, to sell baseball tickets. Newsflash, Texas is hot. And in fact, I encouraged him. I said, Google this thing called the Astrodome. You may have heard of it. It was built in 1965. By the way, that was about 10 years before Time Magazine ran their cover story entitled Another Ice Age. Now obviously discredited because we weren't headed to another ice age. But look, this is an example of how, it is suddenly treated as headline news that air conditioning is good in Texas in the summertime. That ain't new.
Yeah. Although your best tweet of all time remains at this point, Beto O'Rourke asking on one of the late night shows, "Where's Ted Cruz when you need him?" and you coming back with "in the Senate." That was very well played.
You got to have fun in life. Although I will say I was a little dismayed to see the video Beto put out yesterday of him getting a flu shot, and it's just like, dude, I'm really wondering what's in that needle.
There's a guy named Justin Wang. He's a very funny tweeter, and he posted, "Say what you want about Beto. It's kind of effed up that they euthanized him." And there's a picture of him being shot with a needle.
Okay,
and then today the big news is...
I can't laugh at that, but that's funny.
No,
okay.
Andrew Yang, there's video of him skateboarding, and
Yep.
Beto's big thing was skateboarding in the parking lot of Whataburger, not very well. It turns out Andrew Yang even skateboards better than him. I mean, how does that happen? Hold for me for just a moment. Senator Ted Cruz is our guest. We'll continue our conversation with him coming up. Senator Ted Cruz is our guest. You're walking into an event as we speak related to human trafficking. Talk about that, if you would.
Well, it is an announcement of a partnership between A21 and the Outdoor Advertising Association of Texas of a campaign in 70 Texas cities of billboards to combat human trafficking. And it's the Can You See Me campaign. You may have seen their billboards, but they're going to be going up all across Texas. And human trafficking is a horrific scourge. It is modern slavery. And sadly, a recent study by the University of Texas estimates that there are more than 300,000 victims of human trafficking just in the state of Texas. And it is an issue I've been leading the fight on in the Senate for a lot of years, and we've been moving forward with positive legislation. But today's announcement, we've got the chief of police and the mayor and the Harris County sheriff and Cecilia Abbott are all out here today for this announcement, which is a really positive step to fight against human trafficking, to help people open their eyes and see people that are suffering in modern day slavery.
How much of this human trafficking problem can be related to illegal immigration?
It is deeply, deeply intertwined. If you look at the human trafficking, many of those brought in are smuggled in by coyotes and cartels. They're brought in either for sex slavery, often young girls, sometimes young boys, but often young girls or young women. And then they're also brought in for human trafficking for labor, put in sweatshops to work against their will. And both are obviously horrific and wrong. And the more we can secure the border, the more we can stop the cartels from coming in the first place, the more we'll stop the pipelines that are trapping people in this horrific bondage.
Senator, I know you need to go into that event. I appreciate your time. Thanks for coming to town, and we'll see you back soon.
Thank you, Michael. God bless. And by the way, the Stros are going to win it all this year.
Indeed.